Good afternoon, everybody. Um, Happy Monday to you all. I hope you're doing well. I'm just here to talk to you about assignment number 4, transforming a lesson plan. Lesson plan I chose for this is specific. Is I'm actually going a different route this week. I'm going to go. Last week I was in the classroom, and this week I'll be in the gym. I'll do a little bit at the end. I'll showcase what I'm teaching. But this week I plan on teaching the rules, skills, in the game of spike ball. One of those things that some of those kids have, a couple of them maybe have done before, not many. It's a newer up and coming game, and we're trying to get it well known. It's good for the cardiovascular endurance piece of physical education. Also good for eye-hand coordination, which a couple of things that we love to teach here. So that being said, my previous lesson plan, this is kind of where it is, and obviously I'm one of those people who sometimes kind of goes by minutes a little bit here and there, but it's one of those things that the way I used to teach it's here. I start with a warm-up, and I start with some dynamic stretching and a lot of stuff. We try to emulate the movements that we do in class as part of our dynamic stretching. We feel it's very important. And it's also, we try to improve, you just get the cardio or the heart rate up a little bit as well. It's important for them to understand that. And when we did do this lesson before, we started with the discussion, and I used to hand out a piece of paper, and them or a partner and themselves would look off, or maybe a group of 4, or they each get their own piece of paper, depending. Either way, I give them a sheet of paper and go through it, and it talks about the rules. It talks about, how far do you have to stand back from the net? How do you serve, underhand or overhand? How many hits do you get per person, per team? Where do you stand in alignment of the other team? There's lots of rules that go into it, so it's one of those things that they looked at a piece of paper and they probably were like, "Oh, this is beneficial, but maybe it's not. I'd like to see it." Some people are visual learners, and I'll talk about that later in the route we've gone, or the direction we've gone. Then I give kids a chance to, play a little bit based on the rules and what they know and what they've learned. And then I give them time to ask questions as I go around the room, and I kind of take a peek and ask questions for kids. What are you doing there? Or how are you doing this? Or where do you serve from based on where you were? That was one of the things I used to do. And go from there. Then I give kids a chance to match up some competitive matches in one of the first 1 or 2 lessons of this unit. Give kids a chance to talk and find a chance that someone's maybe more competitive with them, and they try to play a game. They learn to play through that way. Maybe they get a chance to ask questions and go from there. And then I close with a cool down and stretches as needed. And then I check for understanding at the end a little bit when I bring them in. Usually the time for me to say, "Hey, what'd you think of spike ball? How'd it go?" And so on and so forth. I get a little more in depth with my other lesson. So as I go forward here, we talk about points of emphasis. As I adjusted the lesson plan, I might come back to this one, but I'll come back there in a second. I'm going to go to the current lesson plan. So the current lesson I currently teach, we start the same way with a warm-up and a stretch, but this is where I've adapted my lesson plan pretty heavily. I start with something called exploratory learning, and I do this with a lot of my units. I call it exploratory learning because I want kids to be exploring their minds and their creativity, and they get some equipment, and what do they do with it? Well, you get a volleyball, what are you supposed to do with it? Obviously, you're supposed to hit it and keep it up in the air. Maybe they get a chance to work on some different shots, whatever. But for this unit spike ball, they get a net and they get a ball, and they work on, and they get a group of 2 or 4, and I say, go explore the game, work on hitting off there, see how many hits you can keep in the air, let them develop their own game, and give them a chance to explore their rules and maybe make their own game, design their own game in 10 minutes. It's a good opportunity for kids to use some creative thinking to get themselves going. Then I bring them in and I talk discussion. And I ask them some questions. What are some things that worked? What are some things that didn't work? Maybe talk about them and let the kids voice their opinion. It actually gets pretty good because there's some kids who really come up with some creative ways to play spike ball. I had actually a group today play some 3-on-1 because the one wanted to be challenged quite a bit, and so it was quite interesting. So that was good to see. But then like I said, talk during that discussion, ask them those questions. But then I give them a video. There's about a 4-minute video, and it's a chance for them to learn visually. If they want a sheet of paper, I offer that up to them. But there's the video that I offer them, and I give them a chance to watch this video that kind of talks them through the rules. What's a serve look like? How many hits per side do you get? What are some good tactics of playing spike ball? But it's one of those things that the video, they visually see it, and it's a good opportunity for them to maybe ask questions. And I give them some question at the end of, hey, do we understand serving? Okay, do we understand how many hits per side? Do we understand the general consensus of the rules of the game? And go from there. So there's my discussion, but it's a little more open because now they've seen it instead of just looked at a piece of paper and not know what's going on. So a big adjustment there. Then I give kids a chance to play live against other teams that maybe they won against, or maybe that they other teams that won, they match up and play together. But they start to play the game a little bit more, and they get into that competitive mindset as well. And sometimes we give kids a chance to be a little more relaxed, and maybe they go back. I give them a chance to go back to their exploratory learning game as an opportunity as well. But it's one of those things that I've definitely adjusted that. And then, like I said, we give those kids time to play a like opponent and play for a score. Which is a big thing. No game. Sometimes they don't like to play for score. Sometimes they do. But the last 5 minutes, it gets pretty ultra competitive when you give a kid a chance to say, "Hey, you're playing for something." And I always say, "Hey, play for push-ups, or play for jumping jacks, or play for wall sits." And when you put some sort of exercise in line, it gets pretty intense and it's kind of fun to watch. And then, like I said, another big thing that changed in the lesson plan is the cool down. We do the stretches needed, but then I check for understanding. Now I'm asking them specific questions based on the video or on things that I might have seen in class, and I try to get their mindset thinking, okay, maybe I try this, or maybe here's a strategy that they didn't try, and I talk a little bit more about the strategy piece than the actual game. So I do some different ways of checking for understanding there. It talks, like I said, at the bottom it says the rules. The students are able to follow the rules. Students are able to participate in a game setting, which we want. Students are able to apply the knowledge they learn towards a competitive game. So some good things. But then I talk about my points of emphasis. The one thing that you want us to ask or want us to add in here is the cultural competency thing is adjusting lessons and that all students understand. So first we put in exploratory learning where they can be maybe they get what they feel comfortable with, so they're not super outside their comfort zone. So I give them a chance to maybe pair up their own partners, but I'm also giving them a chance to explore their learning a little bit where they might have seen it a different way played. The second piece is I use the video for knowledge instead of words on paper. Sometimes it gets, these kids might not it might be an EL student who might not be able to read very well, or a student who's struggling with picking up and comprehending something. So it's good to put the video out there, and I think the video is a big piece as well, and go from there because that visual thing can help them. Checking for understanding, like I said, with the questions through the end is another big piece. Is I'm asking different questions, different people, giving them a chance to speak on a little bit. And obviously, again, with COVID masks, it's quite difficult to get kids to speak, but it's one of those things that when you can check for understanding, it's a big piece of it. And the last piece, or actually the second piece, is the academic achievement. One of those things that we strive for, obviously we want them to strive for a competitive environment, but I'm always talking to these kids about taking life lessons away from the even a game of spike ball. What can they learn from spike ball? How do they go about their mindset if they're losing, or if their partners might not be as good as they want them to be? And this goes with growth mindset too, but I start them to get them to question, okay, what can I do differently, or how can I help my partner understand, or how can I help the other team understand, or how can I challenge myself in different ways instead of just shutting down? Because sometimes when it comes to spike ball or it comes to other games in PE, kids shut down a lot, and it's one of those things that's important for them to open up their minds and say, hey, we don't, it's not losing, it's learning. That's what it's about. You're taking a chance, and these kids are learning something. And again, the growth mindset piece is that exploratory learning where they're exploring, getting their minds outside the box, and they're saying, all right, if I try it this way, maybe it works this way. Or they start to work on a strategy, or they develop a scheme for their game. And we sometimes talk about that too when it starts to get more competitive at the end of the unit. We start to talk about, hey, what's something that we can make, maybe a play off of this, a bump set spike type thing. In spike ball matters. Either way, these are my points of emphasis with cultural competency, academic achievement, and growth mindset. That's kind of the directions you gave for the unit. But either way, that's my lesson. That's where I transform my lesson. That's where I work to transform my lesson from the previous lesson to now my current lesson. There's a few changes in there that I hope you saw, and I'm going to go ahead and show you now through a recording of myself what it looks like on YouTube. For all of you, so you can see me talking to the class a little bit, me calling the class in, me showing a little bit of the video, kind of a little bit of both and everything, so you can kind of see from there. Thanks, everybody.